establishment to the corner of town. What I do with my life is of my own doing. I live it the best way I can.
When people hear the name the Rat Pack, three legendary entertainers usually come to mind first: Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin, and Sammy Davis Jr. They became the faces of an era, representing the effortless, cool, glamour, and late-night excitement of Las Vegas at its peak. But the Rat Pack was never limited to those three men. Peter Lawford and Joey Bishop were also important members during the group's most famous years. Yet unlike Sinatra, Martin, and Davis, their names eventually faded from the Rat Pack story. And that wasn't simply because they were less talented or less popular.
I've read and been told, or rather asked questions concerning gang wars and so on and so forth. Well, there weren't gang wars, but there were beefs and there were battles about position and who should cross the line. And
both men experienced serious falling outs within the circle. And over time, they found themselves pushed further and further outside the group. For Joey Bishop in particular, the story was complicated. He had once been trusted by Sinatra, welcomed into his inner circle, and given a role that made him essential to the group's performances. But eventually, something changed. So how did a hard-working comedian become one of Frank Sinatra's closest collaborators, only to later find himself on the outside looking in? This is the rise and fall of Joey Bishop, and the real story behind his departure from the Rat Pack. By the late 1950s, Bishop was finally beginning to enjoy the success he had spent decades chasing. He had been working the stand-up circuit since the 1930s, slowly developing his dry delivery, sharp timing, and understated sense of humor. His style wasn't loud or frantic. Bishop could get a laugh with a perfectly timed pause, a raised eyebrow, or a single sarcastic remark. After years of grinding away in clubs, his persistence was beginning to pay off. Bigger audiences were noticing him, and more importantly, so were some of the biggest names in entertainment. One of those people was Frank Sinatra.
And I must say there were many times when I had to go on an errand that I skirted certain areas of the town.
Sinatra reportedly enjoyed Bishop's act enough to invite him to open several of his shows. For Bishop, it was an enormous opportunity. Sinatra wasn't merely a successful singer. By then, he was one of the most recognizable entertainers in America, and appearing alongside him could transform a comedian's career almost overnight. Bishop accepted, and the arrangement worked remarkably well. Audiences responded to him. Sinatra appreciated his humor, and a friendship began developing between the two men. Bishop was soon becoming so closely associated with Sinatra that people around the entertainment business reportedly began referring to him as Sinatra's comic.
Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin, Sammy Davis Jr., Peter Lawford, and way on the bottom was my name. Only tall dogs knew I was working there.
And the timing couldn't have been better. Sinatra was preparing to bring together several of his closest friends for a series of performances that would eventually help create one of the most famous entertainment groups in American history: the formation of the Rat Pack. The rise of the Rat Pack was closely connected to Sinatra, but another important figure behind the scenes was Al Freeman, the publicist for the Sands Hotel and Casino in Las Vegas. At the end of the 1950s, Las Vegas was still evolving into the entertainment capital the world would later recognize. Casinos and performers were already there, of course, but the city had yet to fully develop the wild, glamorous reputation that would define the following decade. Freeman wanted to change that. The Sands needed entertainers who could make Las Vegas feel younger, more exciting, and slightly dangerous.
I've been criticized on many, many occasions because of acquaintances and what have you. But I don't do those things to have anybody follow me in doing that same thing, is what I mean.
A destination where visitors might arrive for a show and end up staying awake until sunrise. Established performers such as Jimmy Durante and Sid Charisse were already appearing in Vegas. They were respected stars, but Freeman wanted something capable of attracting a younger generation. Sinatra had reasons of his own for embracing the idea. He had already experienced enormous success, but he was entering his 40s. Hollywood and the music business were constantly searching for younger stars, and Sinatra understood that maintaining his position would require more than simply repeating what had worked before. Together, Sinatra and Freeman began imagining something different, not just another nightclub act, but a loose collection of charismatic entertainers whose friendship itself would become part of the attraction. Sinatra had recently worked with his close friend Dean Martin on the 1958 film Some Came Running, making Martin an obvious choice.
I get the strangest feeling that I'm finished. Will you at least let me say good night? Good night.
Dean possessed exactly the kind of effortless charm the concept needed. Then came Sammy Davis Jr., an extraordinary singer, dancer, impressionist, and comedian whose versatility added another dimension to the group. With Sinatra, Martin, and Davis together, the foundation was already formidable. But Sinatra believed they needed someone who could keep the comedy moving, especially during unpredictable live performances. That was where Joey Bishop came in. Bishop had already proven himself while opening for Sinatra, and his deadpan humor provided the perfect contrast to the larger personalities surrounding him. Sinatra suggested bringing him into the group, and Bishop suddenly found himself entering an entirely different level of show business. Peter Lawford would also become part of the circle. The British-born actor had powerful Hollywood connections and, through his marriage to Patricia Kennedy, was the brother-in-law of John F. Kennedy.
Dean, as a matter of fact, is on a wonderful health kick. He takes very good care of himself. He has a beautiful home and a pool, and every morning he's up at 7 o'clock and takes his customary plunge right down the stairs.
Lawford also became closely connected to Ocean's 11, the film that would bring the group together on the big screen and strengthen the public image of these men as an inseparable gang. The pieces were now in place: Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin, Sammy Davis Jr., Joey Bishop, Peter Lawford. Together, they were about to transform Las Vegas. The Summit. Sinatra's next idea was brilliantly simple. Instead of treating their appearances as ordinary performances, the men would turn the sands into the center of an ongoing spectacle. Their friendship, jokes, drinking, improvisation, and unpredictable behavior would become almost as entertaining as the songs and comedy routines themselves, and Las Vegas was the perfect place to do it. The city was close enough to Los Angeles for Hollywood stars to travel there easily, yet far enough away to feel like an escape from the rules and expectations of Hollywood. What Sinatra and his friends were about to create would become known as The Summit, a legendary series of performances that helped redefine Las Vegas nightlife. And at that moment, Joey Bishop wasn't standing on the sidelines. He was right in the middle of it. In fact, his role would soon become far more important than many people realized. Behind Sinatra's swagger, Martin's effortless charm, and Davis's explosive talent, Bishop became the man responsible for keeping the chaos under control. Las Vegas had almost everything Sinatra and his friends needed. There were casinos, enormous amounts of money changing hands, and a growing appetite for entertainment.
He is partially right about my general upbringing. I never wanted for anything, but we did not have an abundance of anything.
The city was becoming the perfect place to attract visitors from across America, especially if someone could give them a reason to make the trip. That opportunity arrived with Ocean's 11. Once production was organized to shoot the movie in Las Vegas, Sinatra came up with an ambitious idea. Instead of simply filming during the day and disappearing back to their hotel rooms afterward, the group could essentially work two jobs at once. They would spend their days making Ocean's 11. Then, when filming wrapped for the evening, they would head to the sands and perform live. Throughout February 1960, the group reportedly performed 2 shows every night. The engagement became known as The Summit, and almost immediately it turned into one of the hottest tickets in the country. Demand was staggering. The Sands had thousands of rooms, yet approximately 35,000 ticket requests reportedly poured in once word of the performances began spreading. Tourists traveled from around the country, while Hollywood celebrities made the relatively short journey from Los Angeles just to witness what was happening. Audiences never knew exactly what they were going to see. That unpredictability became part of the attraction.
Do you think your boiling point is low? Not anymore. It used to be.
One of the most memorable moments occurred when Marilyn Monroe entered the room while Joey Bishop was performing. Rather than becoming distracted by the arrival of one of the most famous women in the world, Bishop immediately turned it into part of his routine. "I told you to sit in the truck," he joked. The audience erupted, and Monroe reportedly laughed along with everyone else. It was exactly the kind of spontaneous moment that made the summit feel different from an ordinary nightclub performance. The audience wasn't simply watching a polished production. They felt as though they had somehow been invited into a private party between some of Hollywood's biggest stars, and the legend of the Rat Pack was taking shape. Interestingly, the men themselves hadn't created the name that would eventually define them. The press increasingly called them the Rat Pack, and Sinatra reportedly disliked the label. The name had connections to an earlier Hollywood social circle surrounding Humphrey Bogart. According to the famous story, Lauren Bacall once saw Bogart and his friends returning from a long night and remarked that they looked like a pack of rats. What began as a teasing description eventually became attached to Sinatra's circle, and no matter what Sinatra thought about it, the name refused to disappear.
I think that comes with a normal growing up and the way of living, friends, people with whom you become acquainted. I've always admired people who are gentle and who have great patience.
The carefully crafted Rat Pack image. Part of what made the summit so successful was the illusion that absolutely anything could happen. With help from Sands publicist Al Freeman, the performers cultivated the image of 5 men throwing an enormous party on stage. They appeared to be drinking heavily, flirting with women, interrupting one another, forgetting what they were supposed to be doing, and inventing jokes on the spot. To audiences, it looked wonderfully uncontrolled, but much of that chaos was carefully managed. The image of the constantly intoxicated, woman-chasing Rat Pack became so powerful that many fans eventually accepted it as reality. Certainly, some members, Sinatra especially, were known to enjoy drinking away from the stage, but that didn't mean they were actually getting drunk during every performance. According to later accounts, much of what audiences witnessed was theater. In deconstructing the Rat Pack, Joey, the mob, and the summit, authors Richard Lertzman and Lon Davis examined how carefully those public personas were created. The popular image suggested a group of men in their 40s drinking their way through performances, improvising everything and chasing women whenever they had the opportunity. The reality was considerably more disciplined. Dean Martin's daughter, Deanna Martin, later explained that her father could appear to be drinking whiskey on stage, when what was actually in his glass was often apple juice. That makes sense when you consider their schedule. These men were performing late into the night, sometimes doing multiple shows, while simultaneously working on a major Hollywood movie. They were expected back on the Ocean's 11 set early the following morning. Maintaining that schedule while genuinely drinking themselves into oblivion every night would have been nearly impossible. Behind the carefree image were experienced professionals who understood exactly what audiences wanted. They weren't simply partying. They were selling the fantasy of the party, and they were making a fortune doing it. Joey Bishop himself later pushed back against some of the mythology surrounding the group. He reportedly said that he never saw the other members genuinely drunk during their performances. He also found the idea that they spent every night desperately chasing women somewhat ridiculous. These were Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin, Sammy Davis Jr., Peter Lawford, and Joey Bishop at the height of their fame. Women were constantly approaching them. As Bishop essentially explained, the problem wasn't finding female attention. Sometimes it was escaping it. But regardless of how much of the Rat Pack lifestyle was real and how much was performance, the illusion worked brilliantly, and Joey Bishop benefited enormously from it. Bishop's downfall. For a while, Bishop's career seemed unstoppable. The Rat Pack phenomenon continued growing, and association with Sinatra opened doors throughout the entertainment industry. Bishop was no longer simply another comedian working nightclub circuits. He was becoming a star in his own right. He eventually landed his own television program, The Joey Bishop Show, and became one of the most frequent guest hosts of The Tonight Show. For a comedian who had spent decades struggling to break through, it was almost everything he could have dreamed of. Money, television, Las Vegas, Hollywood, and powerful friends. Joey Bishop had finally reached the top. But success can change the balance inside a friendship, especially when that friendship involves someone as powerful and as famously temperamental as Frank Sinatra. According to accounts surrounding Bishop's eventual split from the group, Joey began behaving differently as his status increased. The comedian who had once been thrilled simply to open for Sinatra was now confident enough to make demands of his own. And eventually, one of those demands would cross a line. The situation came to a head when Sinatra was preparing for a series of performances at the Cal Neva Lodge, the famous resort located along the California-Nevada border. This wasn't simply another venue for Sinatra. He had an ownership interest in the property, which gave him considerable influence over who performed there and how the entertainment was organized. Naturally, Sinatra wanted people he trusted around him. Joey Bishop appeared to be one of those people. After everything they had accomplished together, the road shows, the summit, the Rat Pack phenomenon, and the enormous success that followed, there seemed little reason to believe anything could seriously damage their relationship. But behind the scenes, the dynamic had begun to shift. Bishop was no longer the struggling comic, grateful for Sinatra's invitation. He had become successful, established, and increasingly aware of his own value. And when Sinatra approached him about the Cal Neva engagement, Bishop reportedly responded with demands that Sinatra never expected to hear from one of his own friends. The confrontation that reportedly ended Joey Bishop's place in the Rat Pack began with what should have been a relatively simple favor. Frank Sinatra had been scheduled to perform a series of dates at the Cal Neva Lodge, but a scheduling conflict suddenly made it impossible for him to appear. Sinatra needed someone he could trust to step in and keep the audiences entertained. Naturally, he turned to Joey Bishop. Considering everything Sinatra had done for Bishop's career, Frank may have expected the answer to be immediate. Years earlier, Sinatra had given Bishop valuable opening slots, introduced him to powerful people, and eventually brought him into the circle that became the Rat Pack. Bishop had gone from a hard-working nightclub comedian to a nationally recognized television personality. But by this point, Joey no longer saw himself as merely Sinatra's opening act. He had become a successful entertainer in his own right, and according to accounts of the incident, Bishop responded to Sinatra's request by laying out a series of conditions. Instead of simply agreeing to fill in, Bishop reportedly demanded around $50,000 for the engagement. On top of that, he allegedly wanted a private jet to fly him to the resort. Perhaps Bishop believed those demands reflected his new status. After all, he had his own television success and had spent years performing beside some of the biggest stars in America. From his perspective, he may simply have been asking to be treated like the established celebrity he had become. But there was one major problem. The man on the other end of the conversation was Frank Sinatra. Sinatra was famously sensitive when it came to loyalty and respect, particularly among people he considered part of his inner circle. What Bishop may have viewed as ordinary business negotiations, Sinatra apparently interpreted as something much more personal. According to the story, Sinatra didn't argue. He didn't negotiate. He didn't even give Bishop the satisfaction of an angry response. He simply hung up the telephone. And with that, Joey Bishop's place inside the Rat Pack was effectively finished. There was reportedly no dramatic meeting where the other members gathered and formally voted him out. There was no public announcement explaining that Bishop had been removed. He simply stopped being included, and in Sinatra's world, that could be far more devastating. Bishop soon discovered just how completely the door had closed. A role in the 1964 musical gangster film Robin and the Seven Hoods had reportedly been intended for him, but after the falling out, Bishop was no longer part of the plan. The opportunity went elsewhere. Then came an even more visible sign that his old position had been filled. When Sinatra, Dean Martin, and Sammy Davis Jr. reunited for a major charity performance, the person handling the hosting duties wasn't Joey Bishop. It was Johnny Carson. For Bishop, the message could hardly have been clearer. He had once been the Rat Pack's comic anchor, the man who could stand between enormous personalities like Sinatra, Martin, and Davis, and keep the entire performance moving. Now another comedian was occupying the position that had once belonged to him. The relationship that had helped transform Bishop's career was gone, and it had apparently collapsed over a single telephone conversation. Of course, whether Bishop's requests were truly unreasonable depends on perspective. By then, he wasn't an unknown comedian begging for work. He had established himself as a television star and successful performer, and asking for significant compensation may have seemed perfectly reasonable from a business standpoint. But Sinatra apparently didn't see the conversation as business. He saw it as loyalty. From Sinatra's perspective, Bishop was a friend being asked to help another friend. Demanding extraordinary treatment in return may have felt like a rejection of the unwritten code that held Sinatra's inner circle together. And once Sinatra decided someone had violated that code, repairing the relationship could be extremely difficult. For Bishop, the consequences lasted far longer than the lost performances. He apparently carried resentment over his exclusion for years. When Bishop later hosted his own late-night talk show, other members of the Rat Pack appeared as guests. Dean Martin came on. Sammy Davis Jr. appeared. Peter Lawford was welcomed as well, but Frank Sinatra was noticeably absent. Bishop never invited him. That omission suggested that whatever friendship had once existed between the two men had never truly recovered. According to author Richard Lertzman, who researched Bishop's life and his connection to the Rat Pack, the comedian remained deeply bitter about what happened. Lertzman described Bishop as someone who eventually carried resentment not only toward Sinatra and the Rat Pack, but toward the entertainment industry itself, and perhaps that was what made the breakup especially painful. Joey Bishop hadn't simply lost a group of famous friends. He had lost the circle that helped define the most celebrated period of his career. For a brief moment, he had stood beside Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin, and Sammy Davis Jr. at the center of American entertainment. He had helped turn Las Vegas into a playground for Hollywood's biggest stars, and had been there when the Rat Pack legend was being created in real time. Then, almost overnight, he was on the outside. But Joey Bishop's story didn't end with his exile from Sinatra's inner circle. He still had television, comedy, and decades of show business ahead of him. And as the years passed, Bishop would have plenty to say about the men he once shared the stage with, and about the mythology surrounding the Rat Pack itself. Even after his relationship with Frank Sinatra collapsed, Joey Bishop refused to disappear. His days at the center of the Rat Pack may have been over, but his career was far from finished. Bishop continued working steadily in television and comedy throughout the 1960s. His greatest opportunity came with The Joey Bishop Show, a late-night talk show that premiered in 1967 and placed him directly against Johnny Carson's enormously successful Tonight Show. Bishop's sidekick was a young Regis Philbin, years before Regis became one of television's most recognizable personalities. The program lasted until 1969, and although it never defeated Carson in the ratings, it proved that Bishop could command a national television audience without Sinatra standing beside him. Over the following decades, Bishop continued appearing in movies and television, although his career gradually became quieter. He never again reached the extraordinary cultural position he had occupied during those unforgettable nights at the Sands. And as the years passed, the Rat Pack itself began fading into history. Peter Lawford died in 1984. Sammy Davis Jr. died in 1990. Dean Martin followed in 1995, and Frank Sinatra died in 1998. One by one, the men who had once seemed larger than life were gone. Joey Bishop outlived them all. But time also softened at least some of the public drama surrounding his relationship with Sinatra. Despite stories that Bishop remained bitter about his treatment, he occasionally pushed back against the idea that the Rat Pack had been a formal organization with official membership rules. That distinction matters. There was never a membership card, boardroom meeting, or official ceremony where Joey Bishop was declared expelled. The Rat Pack was fundamentally a circle of friends and performers built around personal relationships. When Bishop's relationship with Sinatra deteriorated, the invitations simply stopped coming. In that world, that was enough. Bishop eventually stepped away from show business and lived a much quieter life. He rarely seemed interested in feeding the mythology that continued growing around the Rat Pack. While audiences remembered the tuxedos, cigarettes, whiskey glasses, beautiful women, and late-night Vegas performances, Bishop knew how much work existed behind that supposedly effortless image. He had been there. He had helped create it. And no matter how his relationship with Sinatra ended, Joey Bishop could never be completely erased from that history. On October 17, 2007, Joey Bishop died at his home in Newport Beach, California. He was 89 years old. His death marked the end of an era. Bishop was the last surviving member of the famous Sinatra-era Rat Pack lineup. And perhaps that is the strange irony of his story. The man who had supposedly been pushed out of the Rat Pack ultimately became the final surviving link to its golden age. Today, Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin, and Sammy Davis Jr. remain the names most closely associated with the group. But behind them stood Joey Bishop, the dry, sharp comedian whose timing helped keep those chaotic performances together. His rise showed what being welcomed into Sinatra's world could do for a career. His fall showed just how quickly that privilege could disappear. And whether Bishop was simply negotiating what he believed he was worth, or whether his success truly caused his ego to grow too large, remains open to interpretation. What do you think? Was Frank Sinatra justified in cutting Joey Bishop out, or did Sinatra take a business disagreement far too personally? Let us know your opinion in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this story, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss more stories about Hollywood's biggest legends and the secrets behind their most famous relationships. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.